everyone. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of Amir's Anecdotes. Today I have a very good friend with me, John McSherry. John, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
My name is John McSherry. I'm a real estate investor, real estate broker, live in New York. I have been doing real estate for a pretty long time. Started off as an obsession, and I love what I do, and this is what I do full time.
So, John, are you from New York, born and raised?
Born in New York, but we moved around a lot as a kid. My father was actually an inventor. He invented the toggler bolt, and he never had to go to a job.
No kidding. That's crazy.
Yeah, so he kind of just made patents, created things, and we just traveled, and we went to Atlantic City every weekend growing up. So it was pretty wild, and there was no structure, but it was a fun time, to say the least. But we moved around a lot. So lived in New York, Stamford, Connecticut, then eventually moved to Pennsylvania, went to college in Philly, and then came back to New York in 2006. So I've been here ever since.
Wow. Oh, wow. So you know the tri-state area really well. So the news is oh, the storm's coming from Philly up to Connecticut. You're like, I know all these places in between. That's great. All right, cool. And so now you've been in the real estate business for how long?
Since 2011, I bought my first property, bought it as an obsession, grew up, was watching HGTV, became completely obsessed because I come from a design background. So they didn't have shows back then about designing products and packaging and graphics, which is what I did in my previous career, previous life. So I watched shows on how to renovate houses, and I found interest in that, became obsessed, and bought my first property in 2011, and then decided to become a real estate agent in 2013, and the rest is history.
Wow. So well over a decade of experience in that. And then tell me more about that design industry that you had prior to getting into real estate.
Sure. So I come from that creative background. As I mentioned, my father was an inventor. So growing up, he told me two things that were very important. I want you to think outside the box and be your own boss. And I was always like, Dad, how do I do that? He's like, don't worry about it. You figure it out. So, but he did teach me how to think outside the box and be creative. So as a kid, we were always drawing, we were creating together and building. Whenever he had free time, I would sit at his drafting table and we would just create together. And when I was 6 years old, I actually won a contest called Draw Me a Story and got to meet Keith Haring, who was a famous pop artist from the 80s. I got to paint with them on Channel 13. Yeah, it was pretty monumental because ever since that age of 6, I always knew I wanted to do art and design, and that kind of fueled everything to eventually getting into art school and going to the University of the Arts in Philadelphia. And I ended up getting a Bachelor's of Science in Industrial Design.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah,
And you graduated when? You said 2006?
2006, yeah.
So you graduated in 2006. And so then you went into a design career. Did you start your own business, or you were working for an architecture firm or something like that?
So I actually started off in the fashion industry. I was looking for any job I could possibly get. And the first internship I could get was at a women's lingerie company.
No kidding.
Yeah, so it wasn't what I was expecting, but I ended up doing all their packaging, all their design, their logo, designing store interiors, and I really helped them grow their brand. And then it just kind of blossomed from there.
Wow, that's incredible. All right, so it's 2006, you graduated, now you work at this lingerie company. Were you there the whole time before you pivoted to real estate, or you did another couple of different options in between?
So I was there for about a year and a half, and it's funny, the owners ended up shutting down that business because they ended up getting into real estate. So that was, before real estate was really a thing for me. They started developing real estate in Manhattan, and I ended up going to a toy company, worked in toy design, and then ended up going to my next job at To Exist, which was a men's underwear company, and I was there for about 10 years while building my real estate company at the same time.
Got it. Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. So then it's been, almost 15 years, 18 years since you graduated college and started that process?
Yep.
So how old are you now?
I'm now 43. Well, actually just turned 44. So yeah.
Wow. Oh, it's an 11s, right? That's an 11 year when it's 4 and 4. That's a good luck year.
Exactly.
Yeah. So has the year been lucky for you so far, or?
So far, it's been good. A lot of transitions. Real estate's going through a lot of transitions with interest rates and so forth, but there's a lot of opportunity out there. So when everyone's running this way, you want to go that way. So there's a lot of fear involved in the real estate market. A lot of people holding on, waiting to buy, waiting to sell. But that's really where the opportunities are. So really building right now, which we could get more into later, but we're buying a lot of real estate in Florida right now. We see a lot of opportunity there.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. It's interesting that you say that because, using my financial advisor hat a little bit, I'm seeing more and more people are finally retiring. There's a wave of of that baby boomer generation that like didn't want to retire, or they weren't, as on top of their personal finances and couldn't. But now we're seeing more and more of that. And so where do they go? They go to Florida. So it's interesting that from my perspective, I'm seeing demand shift, but the real estate market in Florida, obviously, if you're seeing this opportunity, is seeing something different.
Right. Correct. And we have seen that wave of people always moving to Florida when they retire, but it's becoming more of a full-time place for, families, young people, all types of demographics. They're building out more infrastructure throughout everywhere from Miami up to Palm Beach and even on the West Coast, Tampa, down to Naples, and even up in Orlando and Jacksonville. We're seeing a lot of development, a lot of people moving there. Even South Florida alone, we're seeing 1,000 people move there a day. So they're building out the Brightline train, which now goes all the way up. Eventually, should go all the way up to Tampa from Miami. So there's opportunities for transportation. They're building out schools, new apartments. There might be a little overbuilding in some areas like Miami and other parts of South Florida, but there's definitely still a lot of people moving there. So you have that. And then I was getting at also COVID actually created a huge shift where a lot of New Yorkers moved down to Florida 2020, 2021, where prices doubled, now tripled throughout South Florida. So right now we're seeing a little bit of a lull in some areas, but I think it's just because it went up so fast and so high that now it's just normalizing a bit.
Now you're a guy, you're in your 40s, you've kind of in your second career, but a decade into your second career.
Correct.
What are all of the ways that you would identify yourself?
Interesting. So obviously father, family man, I'm an entrepreneur in real estate. I still love design. So I see myself as a creative, but I also see myself as a problem solver. And really problem solving is the biggest part of this business, right? Because we just come into it and try to help people, right? Serving others and helping people is really the core of this real estate business. Whether you're an agent helping a family or a single person, whatever it may be, it's how can we solve your problem? As an investor, you come into situations where people have, foreclosures, tax liens, they're dealing with divorce and death. How do you help and serve them and navigate through very difficult times in their life? So I think, really to answer your question, I think it's really just identifying as a problem solver and just solving problems every single day. Things come up. Even contractors, things breaking, the town, the city, there's always problems, there's always disagreements, there's always people upset and dealing with emotions. So it's really helping people navigate and find success.
Yeah, that's interesting. You have that like overlap in your life, right? That left brain, right brain, where you're that creative, but then you got to get into the nitty gritty of that, tax liens and some of that more mathematical stuff and talking about demographics, right? So you're a father, you're an entrepreneur, you're a real estate agent, you're an investor, you're a problem solver. And in all those different versions of you and all the different versions of you that you've had professionally by way of graduating college and moving around a lot and then going in now into your second career, as you think back on that journey, what is the most stressful or difficult financial situation that you've been in?
Well, I'll back up a little bit more and then get to your question. I lost my father at 21 years old. It was a very difficult time for me, right? Because he was like the person I really loved. He was like a backbone to me, someone that I always had, right? Losing him was very difficult, and it made college very difficult, put me in a really bad place. And in 2006, a big part of why I moved to New York was to just get things together, right? I was a college grad, but I had no job. I had nothing. And I moved into my aunt's garage, and it gave me the opportunity to really work on myself and build myself up. And that was one of the most transformative times of my life, and something that I'm really grateful for, which really shaped the rest of my life, right? Because the way that I really got out of that was by getting out and serving other people, right? The more people you help, the more you forget about the stuff you're dealing with. It gets you over your ego. It humbles you. And when you're helping someone, it's fulfilling, and it gives you purpose in life, right? So having that deeply instilled in me and really working on those transformative, years and really rewiring my thinking of just being, of having that servant heart is what has really carried me through. And there's always challenges that come up, right? Especially in real estate, right? So things change, the market changes, renovations don't go as planned. Problems always seem to happen, or like you have a buyer and then the buyer loses financing and you just have to figure it out. So for me, having that strong mindset and being able to deal with problems as they come up, being able to have strong emotional intelligence, dealing with these problems, not getting emotional, and just finding solutions and solving problems is what has carried me through all of this, because things constantly happen. Every single day, it's like, what I tell people is when I used to cold call every morning you wake up, you verbally get punched in the face. How do you continuously wake up, get punched in the face, and be enthusiastic about it and look forward to it? That's the idea. So really just a continuation where every day something happens. And if you don't have the right mindset, you're not going to get through it. That's really the core of everything, because, you really have to be passionate about what you do. I'm very passionate about it, because when it gets hard, you need to continue working on it, continue pushing through. A lot of real estate agents are dropping out of the business right now. I think it's probably like 20 or 30%, right? They're just giving up, but they're not pushing through these hard moments. So I think I know if you don't have the right mindset, you're not going to make it through these difficult times.
Yeah. Wow. That's, first of all, I'm sorry for the loss of your father. I know that's kind of what we first connected on, right? I lost my father around the same time, but I'm a little younger than you, right? So I was 17 when my father passed, and it really does shape you. It forms you into a new man faster than probably your peers and the other men around you had to, go through that adolescence. Correct.
And sorry for your loss. And I think you put it in the most perfect way. For me, it forced me into a place of an extreme low, rock bottom, where the only way to get up is to catapult and to push over that bottom, to explode into something completely new and different. It forced me to learn how to become a man, right? My father also, even though he was an inventor and didn't go to work every day, there was no structure. I had to learn that structure on my own. But I also always knew that I had a father to fall back on. And even though he was always gambling and we were in Atlantic City, I always knew I had a place to go. And when that rug is pulled out from under you and you have nowhere else to go and your back is up against the wall, that's where you really have to learn how to figure it out, become a man or a woman, or just grow up and become an adult and just take control of your life. So that's powerful for me.
Absolutely. So would you say that in thinking about the last 44 years of your life, that your father passing was the most stressful financial situation you've been in?
Yes, even though there really wasn't much money to have at that point, right? Because I wasn't even working a real job. I was working in nightclubs, I was bartending, I was DJing. So for me, it was more of life or death, really, because for me, it was one of the most depressing times. And working in that nightclub environment as a young, or being in your early 20s is a very difficult time, right? Because now you're not thinking clearly, you have bad influence of other people. So I think it was more about just, life or death than it was about making money or not at that point.
Right, yeah. So you had moved into your aunt's, you said?
I moved into my aunt's garage, and she took me in. I was so grateful that she took me in. I needed her in that moment, and she really helped me shape the rest of my life.
And then what were you paying in rent to your aunt, or she just kind of let you live there?
So living there for free at first, but then after about 2 years, I was paying her about $300 a month to live in that garage, and just to kind of help her with electric and everything.
Of course, yeah. And where was she, on Long Island, or was she in the city?
Yes, she was in Valley Stream. So
okay, got it. So you go up. So you're in Philly. You just graduated college. Your father passes. You run to your aunt. She's able to take you in, living for free for a little bit, but like bartending, working in nightclubs, and it sounds like working at that design company as well. And then, $300 is still not substantial, but, you went from what am I going to do to, your aunt graciously taking you in. Now, in that process, you realized you had to be a man really fast, and you need to catapult and springboard up, and you leverage that family relationship, right, in order to not worry about a $2,000 a month rent or a $4,000 a month mortgage. And in that process, how did you know kind of what to do? Did you stumble and fall and figure it out? Did you ever think, is there a lawyer or someone that you can reach out to? Or is there a financial advisor that can help you get all this together? Or did you really just kind of stumble your way through it? What was your thought process like as you, started that journey of adulthood?
Sure. So great question. At that point, I actually ended up into a 12-step program, which actually reshaped my thinking and gave me a design for living. So really it was relying on fellowship, other men that were in this group. It was self-development, taking a deep dive into past pains and things that I was dealing with, resentments, and clearing that, and really having almost more of like a spiritual awakening. That may not have been the answer that you were expecting.
No, that's great, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's the part of when you go through difficult times, it's very common and normal, and what I see all the time is that feeling of loneliness. And I think that you solved for that, but maybe without even knowing it or intentionally doing that. Going through, AA and that 12-step program, going to your aunt, you created your own community around you. And it's that feeling of loneliness that's important to fight. And that's actually been the theme of this podcast so far. Every episode, when I ask people, how did you kind of get through it? It's they lived with a family member, they reached out to their community, they leveraged the people and family around them. And that's every single episode that I've done so far. That's their solution and how they got out of that most difficult time of their life.
Powerful. And the other thing that I mentioned earlier is just getting out and serving other people, right? Because the more people I help, the better I felt, the more purpose, the more fulfillment, and the more it just kind of pushed me into a great place. And that's really, I feel like, the basis of all business, right? It's just relationships. How do you build relationships with people and help people, right? And I feel like there's no better way than to just get out, do that for free. Like, I had nothing else to do but to just get out and serve other people. That's for me was one of the greatest lessons in life.
Yeah. Wow. So the two main things you did really to shape your life into the success that you are now is rely on a support network of other human beings that are in a situation similar to yours or that love you, right? Because they're your family. And then two was you thought about how can you serve others? It's really powerful. There was an interesting study that I had read that looked at the difference in like Western mindset, like American children. And I want to say it was like either Mexican children or children in Bangladesh. And it looked at their brains and, for the American children, the happiness centers of their brain lit up when they received a gift from someone. Whereas it was either Mexico or Bangladesh, those children, the happiness centers of their brain lit up when they gave a gift. And so it's a legitimate rewiring and change of the brain and the culture when you live in service to others, and that truly, genuinely brings you joy. And I fully understand that. My family's Pakistani. I've always grown up like that. And there are a lot of times where people ask me like, well, you're doing it because it makes you feel good and therefore it's selfish. It's not. It's actually a totally rewiring of your brain and a different culture entirely.
Correct. And that's something that I understand on the deepest level possible, from being at that low bottom. And the only way to get better was to be selfless. And that's actually part of or led me to a foundation that I just started. So when I had another awakening around 2018, I went to a Tony Robbins conference and did a lot of self-development and just deep diving to like what I really want at the core and how I want to serve other people. And I came up with this idea of how I want to feed 1 million children a year. I have no idea how it's going to happen, but I just keep speaking it into reality, manifesting it and talking about it. And I know that the answer is going to reveal itself. So I started a foundation called Be a Great Human, really. And really what it is a call to action, right? So we're going to be making t-shirts that we're selling where 100% of the proceeds go to this foundation. And we're going to be feeding children in Africa and South Africa. We're actually going in November, and we're creating farms. We're creating ways of creating self-sufficient infrastructure for these families and children, but also finding ways to help them grow professionally and to create a community, right? Because for me, I learned that having small successes and serving and helping others creates fulfillment and purpose, right? So how can we then help other people have that same gift that was so freely given to me? So we're working on all the kind of ins and outs of it, but I already have a friend that's working in South Africa, West Africa, and Guatemala right now that already has the whole infrastructure built out, and he's building schools. So now we're finding ways to feed them as well. And that's something else that really just comes from that mustard seed of belief of how can I get out and help people? And now it's something that I feel moved to spread that as far as I can.
That's amazing. Wow. That's really inspiring. That's incredible. I would love to get more involved in that.
I would love for you to be involved. Thank you.
That's great. So, John, that's from the perspective of Amir's anecdotes. I mean, that's all the questions that I had for you today. It's really powerful stuff, and it's an amazing story. And thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
The last question I have for you is, really, that design company that you worked for, and then now where you're, a real estate developer and investor, are you just incredible at designing lingerie closets for your clients?
That's all I do now. And also, we just design lingerie closets. No, that's actually a great idea, though. Maybe that's something you should offering as a feature,
Yeah. I mean, I know, my wife, we had custom designed her closet, and she's obsessed with it. There's a sink in there. She does her makeup in there. Oh, yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So, all right, that's great. John, so if someone wants to reach out to you, whether they want to know more about real estate, whether they want to know more about your foundation, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
I would say just look me up on Instagram. Probably the easiest and the most visual way that you could even message me there. It's just my name, John, J-O-H-N, john.mcsherry, that's MCSHERRY, or you could always just Google me, John at Douglas Elliman, and message me there. There's a few other websites that I could be in touch, but Instagram is a pretty good visual way for us to communicate, I believe.
That's great. John, thanks for being here, and thanks for sharing your story, and thanks for being an amazing human being.
Thank you, and thank you for being a great friend, and thank you for the opportunity to have me on the show. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.